Ladies and gentlemen, Malcolm has asked me to share my own reflections on the Piper 25 conference by way of closing remarks. And I must say I've been delighted to see so many friends and colleagues in the industry here over the last 3 days. It's been a privilege to share time together with you all, and I'm sure, like me, each of you has taken a lot from what you've seen and heard. It's also an honour for me to have the opportunity to provide the closing address for what has been a very valuable conference. For those of you who watched the Piper Alpha video yesterday, you will have heard the names of a number of platforms mentioned. Talisman Sinopec is now the operator of those platforms, Claymore, Tartan, as well as the replacement Piper Bravo. So I felt it was appropriate that we played our part in the conference with many of my colleagues in the delegates and making a contribution by speaking at the conference. During the conference, we've heard from some of the world's most respected and learned authorities on safety, legislation, and work practices. On the opening day, the tone was set by Lord Cullen, who reminded us about the conclusions from his inquiry and the 106 recommendations which were made and accepted by the industry. These included, of course, moving responsibility for enforcing safety in the North Sea from the Department of Energy to the Health and Safety Executive, thereby removing the potential conflict of having both production and safety overseen by the same agency. Another key recommendation was the introduction of safety regulations which require the operator of every fixed and mobile installation in the UK waters to submit a full and robust safety case to the HSE for approval. But as Lord Cullen emphasised, safety hinges on leadership and management and, of course, the motivation and involvement of the workforce. I'm sure that we're all forever mindful about the improvements within our industry that were brought about as a very direct result of Lord Cullen's work. Work that has stood the test of time and has undoubtedly helped us to get to where we are today. Listening to how he set out the scope of his investigation, his reflections on what he learned, the glaring deficiencies that he uncovered, and the robust nature of the inquiry itself really hit home for me. So too did the many specific references he made to the more recent dark days for our global industry, Macondo, Buncefield, Texas City. And I felt there was an underlying theme that was summed up very succinctly with the words, "They forgot to be afraid." A similar theme was echoed in Judith Hackett's excellent presentation on day one, on the role of the Health and Safety Executive and of regulation in general. Judith asked the industry to go further than simply sharing knowledge and instead deliver real, sustainable learning to drive improvements in safety performance. And I'm going to come back to that challenge. Judith also challenged us to reach out to other hazardous industries to learn how risks are managed. And I think the presentations from Sir Charles on the Nimrod disaster from John Bresland, former chair of the US Chemical Safety Board, and of course the actors who recounted the Fukushima disaster provide very powerful examples for all of us. Jake Malloy also spoke on day one with great passion as usual and posed the question that we must continue to ask ourselves. Why do hydrocarbon releases continue to happen? What do we need to do, and are we listening to our workforce and ensuring they are fully involved in every stage and at every level? Again, I'm going to comment on the question of hydrocarbon releases later, but as you heard from Les earlier this afternoon, the feedback from our workforce involvement session clearly shows that our efforts to engage with the workforce are really continuing to gain traction. And the presentations on safety cases from Professor Andrew Hopkins from the Australian National University also resonated with me, particularly his reference to the CEO who demanded that a report containing only good news was rewritten to include the bad news as well. That's something that we talk about a lot at Talisman Sinopec and as more broadly across the industry. In our company, we talk about good news simply being bad news early. But I think it's important to get away from classifying news as good or bad and instead just look at the facts, uncoloured, uncensored, and without any degree of sugarcoating. Equally, it's vital that we maintain open communications right up to the top of any organisation, and in my case, so that it's possible for my leadership team and I to assign the right level of capital or people resource to fix any problem that comes to our attention. I wanted to repeat some of the statements made by numerous of the excellent presenters that we've had at this conference, because they're points that we should all have at the forefront of our minds every day. No amount of detailed regulations could make up for deficiencies in the way that safety is managed by operators. Maintain a sense of vulnerability. Question untested assumptions. Combat tolerance of deviation. Complexity is often the enemy of safety. And finally, my particular favourite from Sir Charles, simplicity is your friend. They are but a few of the insights shared with us, but each of them struck me. For the most part, they were made in reference to Piper Alpha or to the more contemporary incidents I've already mentioned, yet each of them applies to what we do in this industry every single day. And there's no doubt that the expertise within this part of the world exists as a result of the Piper Alpha disaster. The safety culture within the North Sea today is the benchmark against which all others are measured. We've become the world's foremost authority on offshore safety. That was required because on Piper Alpha, we were shown in the most terrifying and unforgettable manner that standards were simply not high enough 25 years ago. We've become the masters of reflection. We stop, think, and analyze everything that we do. We empower our people at all levels to participate fully and to challenge not only the way in which they work, but the way in which they see others working. Sir Charles talked about ensuring a questioning culture is at the heart of our organizations. And while I think that we do this for the most part, we were reminded of certain examples. NASA 20 years ago, where such cultures appeared to exist, but in fact were superficial at best. It's not enough to have posters, booklets, and yes, PowerPoint presentations. A library of glossy literature with buzzwords and flashy initiatives will never substitute deep involvement, commitment, and ownership of safety at all levels in an organization. And too often, we're reminded that we can always do more. 6 days ago, 2 individuals lost their lives and 1 was injured on a platform in the Dutch sector of the North Sea. And while the specific circumstances remain under investigation, it's yet another poignant reminder for each of us that incidents do happen, sometimes with tragic results. So while we've made significant progress since the Piper Alpha disaster, the work continues on preventing major hazards. The industry is stronger and safer today, but the work is far from over. Yesterday's Workforce Involvement Day was a good example of what this industry does well, bringing together the men and women who really are the energy industry to find better ways of working, regardless of the name or logo on their boiler suit. It's through the involvement and commitment of our workforce that we will make a real difference, and we all have a part to play in that. Coming together for a reflective timeout for Piper yesterday reminded us what happened on the 6th of July, 1988, and that it remains just as fresh in our minds today. And it must remain so, both for our existing workforce and for the younger generations joining this industry. I think it was hugely symbolic that more than 1,200 people came together yesterday here at the AECC to watch the Remembering Piper video. It's particularly moving when you consider the entire North Sea industry paused to view that same video at the same time, and tens of thousands more on and offshore in the UK and around the world will also have watched the video by the time the anniversary arrives. The events that unfolded that night 25 years ago were, in every sense of the word, a tragedy. Each and every one of us has been bestowed with a great responsibility. We must learn from past mistakes and put the safety of the men and women who continue to devote themselves to this industry above all else. Equally, we must recognize that to truly embrace continuous improvement is to accept a fundamental truth. We can always do more. Over the course of this conference, we have learned more about advances in technology, better training and competency development, more rigorous processes too, and all of these help us to advance along that journey. But we cannot allow ourselves to believe that we've done everything that we can or that we've done enough. So what will each of us do now, taking on board again what we've heard and learned this week? Another of Judith's challenges on day one was for each of us to take action when the conference is over, and I wanted to share the action that I am going to take when I go back to my office. This conference is an opportunity to take stock and share ideas for improvement with competitors and partners alike, because when it comes to safety, there can be no competition, only partnership and collaboration. With that in mind, I'm sure each of us has ideas and plans for what to do within our own organizations, and that's to be commended. For my part, I'll be working to help strengthen our audit groups and ensure they are as effective as they can be in testing and verifying our systems, and to check that those systems are delivering as they should be. I'm also going to continue to promote the sense of chronic unease throughout our business when I visit sites, when I talk to people in the office, and that theme has been reflected throughout the conference. Equally, it's vital that we continue to share learning throughout the industry, and we have some world-leading fora through which to achieve this. Our Step Change in Safety organization is truly unique and is rightly held up as a beacon of good practice globally in bringing employers, regulators, unions, and of course the workforce together in the relentless pursuit of continued improvement in safety performance. Through Step Change in Safety and the Asset Integrity Steering Group, and of course as a result of everyone here and at our sites playing their part, we have reduced the number of hydrocarbon releases, as Steve mentioned, by nearly 50% in a 3-year period. This is a remarkable achievement, but of course it's not enough, which is why we are now ready to set a new and bold target for the next 3 years. As an industry, we are committing to reducing the number of hydrocarbon releases by a further 50% over the next 3-year period. Now, it's important to recognize that this is an appropriate but very aggressive target, but it's one which I am confident will drive the further step change in the level of engagement from senior leaders right through the workforce that is required to achieve this bold target. In addition, and in response to a further challenge from Judith Hackett, we're setting a second target to ensure that all learnings from hydrocarbon releases are shared using the SAIDI database. This is important because it gives companies the opportunity to drive sustainable learning, and we will achieve this with every operator across the UKCS playing their part. With that, I would like to close by thanking Malcolm Webb and the oil and gas team, as well as Les Linklater and the Step Change in Safety team, and of course all of you for participating in what I think has been an extremely valuable conference. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.